Hi everyone and welcome to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. I'm your host, delonewolf, and first of all, a bit of a heads up because next week from Thursday till Monday I'll be on vacation. I'll be in France for 5 days with my family. I'll be doing stuff like hiking and good eating, but yeah, I'll be gone for 5 days. I did have a pretty good arena in Hearthstone. So that'll be a few videos that I'll be able to plan for that week, but there won't be an EVE Talk next week and I'll be gone for 5 days. So if I miss a day or something like that, for the uploads, that's why. Anyways, we are here for the market in EVE Online, of course, so let's jump right in and we will start with plex at 55 seconds. And let's take a look because that one is going up quite substantially. Buyers at 870 and the sellers are at 880. If we go for the price history here, you can clearly see that we've been going up for a few weeks now. The reason for this, honestly, I do think it is plex for good. It's also been extended because there was a second earthquake in Nepal, and yeah, that's actually thousands of plex that are going out of the economy, and thus decreasing the supply, while people probably still want their plexes, and it's still below 900 million. So I think that's just what's happening here at the moment. The plex for good drive is increasing the price of plex pretty substantially. Let's move on to the trading certificate then. That one is following suit quite nicely. It's also at 880 million, or practically that. No one is selling those anymore. Buyers are at 850, sellers are at 900 million. So yeah, the uptrend is here, and with an extended plex for good, expect this to continue for a little bit longer. Next up, we've got the risk up certificate. That one is taking off a little bit from its 160 million bottom. It was moving against plexes and the multiple pallet trading certificate for a little bit after that small peak right here, early April or maybe mid-April, something like that. But now I do think it's going to start to go up together with the other two, because the pressure is just too high. Anything related to plex is going to feel this increase in price right here, and so now, yeah, we're going to start moving in sync on all three of them. Unfortunate for the people that that want to plex their accounts, you know, you have to put down a bit more ISK for that, but a good sign for the people in Nepal. I think that the higher plex goes, we can say the more people have been donating plex for good. So I'm actually okay with this increase personally. Next up, let's move on to some minerals, and that's at 310. And let's take a look here. First of all, we'll start with the smallest one, titanium, which is finally stabilizing at just below 5.3 ISK. So we're looking at 519 for the buyers, 528 for the sellers. Around 0.1 ISK in margin in between them. Honestly, this feels a bit more normal. When we had these much higher prices here, above 6 ISK, the margin tended to be really paper thin, just a few ISK. But this feels more like what we had a few years ago, with a healthier margin and prices of around 5.3 ISK, which is still okay. Of course, we would prefer to see it above 6 if we are mining, but this is alright, and it's finally finding a more stable point here, it seems. So let's see if that can continue. Supply demand here, there's a billion coming in, there's a billion being asked for, a couple more billion here. So maybe a bit more demand than supply, which I think is good to support the current price range. Let's take a look at pyrite next. Well, the chart still needs a little bit of time, but it looks like pyrite is going to start to stabilize at around the 11.2 ISK price point. So we're talking 11.4 for the sellers, 11.07 for the buyers. Again, a little bit more margin than what we're used to. But I think this is all actually a pretty good sign that we are starting to stabilize around here. And so 130, 170, 370 here, we've got 220, 200. So yeah, there's still a little bit of pressure from supply here. A lot of people are bringing in their pyrite to try and sell, just pushing the price down. But looking at this chart, I think it's finally going to start to stabilize here as well. Let's take a look at Mixalon. That one tried to stabilize above 44, but it looks like that one is actually in danger. Let's take a look. Yeah, 43.88. Someone's coming in with a single order. There are a few more just above 44 ISK and then 43.20 though. So that gap is closing very rapidly. It will be just below 44 ISK, I think. Supply demand wise, we're seeing 40, 30. Something like that, but here we've got 100 million, we've got 100 billion, so I do think that demand is starting to pick up here and that we will soon stabilize for Mexalon as well, which after all is good news for miners. I think they've seen their ISK per hour decline quite substantially, and so now finally we could see the high-SEC minerals stabilize a little bit. Here is Isogen, that one unfortunately still going down, heading for a 6-month low below 115, so that's not great news for the miners here. 113.5 for the sellers, actually jumping quite a bit against each other right here. If you'll see 113.95, 0.6 and then 0.5, those are not 0.1 is, so this still seems to have some momentum. And if you look at the margin as well, 110 for the buyers. I think we'll actually close on Isogen close to 110, so that still has a little bit of a way down to go on the chart here as well. But I'm hoping that by next week, when unfortunately I won't be here, that we'll actually start to see all of them have a bit more of a sideways pattern, that all of this could finally stabilize. Let's take a look at some high-SEC ones then. Let's start with Zydrine here, which has found its price point above 1200 ISK for a few weeks already, and so it seems to be staying here. 12.50 pretty much for the sellers and 11.95 for the buyers. So again, healthy margin, supply demand here, a bit more supply than demand, still adding some pressure on here, but overall this all looks like it's going to stabilize around here. And next up we've got Megasite, 2000 to 2059, so that's a very small margin, probably percentage wise the smallest of all of the minerals here. And the supply demand here, we get 3 million units coming in for these two orders, but we also have demand of 3 million units right here. So that looks much more like a healthy and stable market that's going to stay above 2000 ISK for Megasite. So that's all looking decently well. I'll touch on Morphite, which is interesting, good choice actually, touching on Morphite here. That one is actually taking off substantially up to 8,500. Would there be more demand, more Take 2 demand or something like that? It's a possibility. Supply though coming in here 1.5 million, 1.4 million, so there is still decent supply compared to demand, but it looks like people are actually purchasing a lot of Morphite from the market, pushing the price up quite substantially. If you have any idea what's happening here, because this is against the trend of all of the other minerals, then feel free to post that in the comments. Pretty lucky that I happened to check it, and this is something completely different from all the other minerals. So Morphite is related to Take 2 production, so it is different from all of the other ones, but it's quite surprising to see an increase from, well, almost 5,000 to almost 8,500. That's at least like what, 70-80% increase in price over 6 months. Not insignificant, especially since most of it has happened in the last few months. So I missed that, but here it is, the Morphite move. All right, next up we'll check Tech One chips. Let's take a look at the impact there. 855. I'm having a good time on this one. Here's the Apocalypse, and that one is finally moving a bit more stably, but at 180, where you could say 175 seemed to have been a price before. So I do think that the mineral changes will have a little bit of an impact on the Apocalypse, meaning that it will be slightly higher than we had 6 months ago on average, but very stable here so far, so that's good to see. Next up here is the Caracal, often bought in big fleets by Nosec Powers, but it does look like 5-day and 20-day moving average and the price point here is going to be closer to 11.6 million, whereas before that maybe just below 11 million is where you would have purchased the Caracal. So a little bit more expensive is supply coming in, at least that is 110 here, 1810, but it's not that much more than some of these demand orders. So I would say, yeah, the Caracal might end up quite a bit higher than 6 months ago. Next up, we've got a Dominic's here. Starting, well, I should really start with this part of the chart here, around 195, maybe just below that. You can clearly see that the second half of the chart is above 200 million, or maybe more around 200 million on average, with a little bit of a dip here, but quickly the Dominics have recovered between 195 and 200 million. So it's slightly higher in price than 6 months ago, or on the consensus price. It's good to see that we are still staying in a reasonable band here, but again, slightly higher than before. 194.4 for the buyers, 201 for the sellers. So yeah, we are just in slightly higher prices for Tech 1 chips, which honestly over 6 months might just as well be monetary inflation in EVE Online. This is not a sign that there is a drastic problem with Tech 1 production. Here's the Myrmidon then, very similar, with a nice little spike up from, let me see here, 52 to 57 million, just below 10%, so it's not really that drastic, but supply has come in here. Look at that, 27 here, 11, 16, quite a few decently recent orders here, so that gap has been plugged pretty quickly, and now we are back at, let's see here, well, 51.5 and 50 million for the buyers. And were we below 50 million before? No, so we're really coming back to a reasonable price for the Myrmidon. That's good for a Tech 1 market that I think most EVE Online players will want to be pretty stable overall. Next up here we've got the Stabber. That one is taking off again after a very low point though. So being below 10 million is not something the Stabber usually does. And then here now we have 11 million, or just above that, up to 12 million for the sellers, just below 10 million for the buyers. So 66, 12, 15, there's still quite a few of them, although most of them are on low order. So I guess that this price drop below 10 million really has held industrialists off of supplying more Stabbers to the market, increasing the price now again. So this is just market activity, some big buying, some people holding off, bringing more Stabbers to the market, waiting for the price to come back up. But overall, all of this is still well within tolerable ranges, you know, just above 10 million, and here 12 million are where the spikes are at. So in between there, we're definitely staying in that band, which is quite okay. Next up here we've got the Tornado taking off this week, pretty cool. Last week we had the Myrmidon right here doing its move. Now we've got the Tornado doing a move. You can once again see that there is this very slow trend over these 6 months of the Tornadoes going up in price, you know. If we look at the first half of the chart, you're probably looking at 65 million maybe on average. If you're looking at the second part of the chart, you're looking at probably 67 million. So a very slight increase over 6 months. It is noticeable across most of these ships. And here the Tornado, I guess supply is gone, exactly. And it is, well, most of these are actually pretty old. So I'm guessing here Nullsec Alliance came in, bought some Tornado fleets, and now we need to wait for supply to come back, plug the gap, and then we're bound to see a similar chart to the Myrmidon for Tornado in 1 or 2 weeks. And finally here we have the Vexor, which has been spiking quite a lot lately. As you can see here, with spiky behavior 6 months ago, then very stable period. What was that? Early this year, so very stable 4 months here from January to April. But here once again we do see these spikes, and maybe we can start to see a slowly increasing average price here as well. 11.2 million on average right here, and it is likely that we'll settle closer to 11.4, 11.5 I think for the Vexors. 11.4 for the sellers though, and 10.9 or just below 11 million for the buyers. There is still a chance that the Vexor can settle where it has for the last 6 months, but there's a bit more buying and selling happening in the Vexor market, causing some spiky behavior. Still, as you see the numbers here, definitely a lot of supply, and so this downtrend right here at the end is probably going to continue until close to 11 million, where it's actually the buyers that are saying, okay, that's low enough, 11.4. So not that big a margin anymore. It is definitely going to close right here. So yeah, take one market. This slow uptrend over 6 months is visible, but overall everything seems very healthy, I would say. Next up, take two market, 15.15 for that. Let's see if we can spot some trade opportunities here. The basilisk, unfortunately, I would say that is in too stable waters at the moment and not close to a bottom. Closer to 170 or below 170 could be an okay basilisk, but yeah, 179 for the buyers, 185 for the sellers. Small margin, decent supply. Nope, I would not move on the basilisk at the moment. Here is the Guardian though. After reaching a bottom of 115 on the data points, it's now trying to work its way up just a little bit, but honestly, let's see, 115. Yeah, actually the buyers have already moved up, but they're still below 120. Buying Guardians below 120 is probably a decent move. Still, there is decent supply here as well, so I'd be careful, but maybe for a medium-term investment, if you can buy Guardians below 120 on the buy orders, I do think that those are pretty decent investments. Next up here we've got the Hound, again after the low for 6 months that we had here, where I said, well, maybe buy a couple. We are now moving back into a bit of a more normal territory. If the Hound can pick up from there, move to 119, 120, something like that, you've got a good opportunity to have made quite a bit of money. At the moment the buyer is still below 16 million, which is still okay. You know, if you can pick them up on the buy orders, that would be a good move. Just wait for this supply to be chewed through, and if we reach 18, 19 million, you've got a decent profit on your hand there. So there is still some opportunity, but of course the real dip, that's already over. Next up here we've got the Manticore moving below 21 million. No, still 21.5, 20.5 roughly. For the Manticore, a bit higher than all the other covered up, so I'd be very careful on making a move here. Next up we've got the Nemesis. That was a very nice spike right there, look at that, from below 18 to 20 million. That's a bit of an opportunity. Now we are moving around the 19 million mark, 18 for the buyers, 19 for the sellers, so it's a little bit too late. You know, you could have picked up buy orders well below 18 million before, but now it's a little bit too late for that. And if you still have them, hold on for a next spike. You never know when these covered up ships will come back in vogue and you'll be able to sell them above 20 million. Then that's a really good situation to be in. But you know, you can still try on the buy orders, but it's going to be very risky and difficult, I think, to pick any of them up anymore now that this low 6-month low is over. Next up here we've got the Oneros, again a 6-month low, all of them very close to one another. That one is moving up quite nicely, so you've been able to pick up Oneros below 140 a few weeks ago, or well, close to, maybe a bit more than that, close to a month ago maybe, and now they're actually going for 155 on the sellers, so below 140, 155, more than 10%, looking quite okay. The buyers are actually starting to work their way up to 150 as well, so that opportunity unfortunately is over. But if you manage to pick up a few very cheap Oneroses, start looking out for an opportunity to sell and make a nice profit. Here's the Purifier then. That is the opportunity that I was waiting for, so I'm definitely going to make my move on the Purifiers. I've bought them below 16, I think, or very close to that, but now buyers have moved up to 18, sellers have moved up to 19. And so yeah, this is great, you know, double low right here. I actually made a move on the on these covered up ships myself as well, on these lows for 6 months, and now you can see that this market is still alive. The Purifier, it's pretty much a good time to try and make a couple million profit on every Purifier I bought, and I think I'll actually make that move before I move on a holiday for 5 days, because this is great. You know, we're moving back towards the 20 million. You could say maybe it's a bit early to sell them, but that's why I have some other sell bombers where I'm waiting for a better opportunity. But this is a lovely spike from 16.5 up to 19 million. Yeah, that's 2.5 million, pretty easy. That's definitely better than 10%, and then it's obviously profit that you can take at that point already. I'm really glad to see the Purifier here moving back into a normal average, so that means that there is definitely hope for the other ones, except the Manticore there. That one's already been there, but to still move up back towards the 21 million price range as well after their dip. So I think it could happen, and that even if it's medium term or long term, having bought at these very low prices is going to turn out to be a good choice. And then finally the Scimitar here, also taking off their all-time or 6 month low, not all-time, but 6 months low, very close to 115 million. We're now already looking at 128 for the sellers, 124 for the buyers, so they've been forced to move up as well. I would wait, honestly, on the Scimitar. I would wait for a better opportunity considering the rest of the 6 month chart, but if you manage to buy them below 120, you've probably made a very good choice right there. And then finally we have the Tech 3 ships, 2045 for that. Let's take a look at what they've been doing, because the Tengu, we already know from the ticker, has actually been moving up. So here's the Confessor. I mean, these tactical destroyers, no need to look at them too much. We need to wait a bit longer for the chart to start to normalize from the actual launch of the ships, and then maybe we'll start to see some actual movements here. We do have a big volume spike right here, which was when I think the increased cost of producing them was announced. Still, that hasn't really phased the markets. Confessors are still pretty damn cheap, 31.2 million for the buyers, 34.7 for the sellers. Very affordable ships to use in low sec. I think they're very popular there. Next up here, the Legion. After the spike, it did go back down. Now it's stabilizing at 140. Supply wise, unfortunately, 15, 17, 27, 9. That's a lot more than demand here. So the pressure on Tech 3 cruiser prices is constantly there. But once in a while you do see people come in, probably buying fleets preparing for war in Nosek, or maybe wormhole space possibility as well, of course, increasing the price. But that pressure is always there. It's very difficult for these cruisers to really break out. Here you can see a very short-lived spike on the low-key. Now we're already below 140, and yet we still have 15 and 29 of them coming in very recently below 140. So that pressure, that oversupply, that overproduction in Tech 3, it is definitely there. It's also what is keeping these tactical destroyers at a very low price range. Here's the Proteus. You know, that one's got a bit of an upward potential. I guess people have been buying Protei. Where do they come from though? Well below 140 with here, and so I do think that pretty soon, here we see again 11, 12, pretty soon we'll start to see this pressure again on the Proteus, and it will correct back towards like 150 and then maybe close to a 140, where another big entity might say, okay, time to buy a Proteus fleet. So I do think that that's what's happening here at the moment. Here's this Zwepel then, dipping below 40 million already, 38 million for the Zwepel. Look at that, 88, 104, 14, 19, 20. The production potential in Tech 3 is so big that the market just can't absorb it. And here's the Tengu then. Well, it's a very timid increase in price here. Let's see if suppliers have already made their move. And yeah, 10, 5, 5, 9, 16 and 44. Those are the latest orders trying to point one each other in the game. So that pressure on Tech 3, it is there. There is more production than demand at the moment. And so this is why we're seeing this pattern over and over again. Now it is the Proteus that seems to be on a roll here. You know, it is moving up, but you can already tell in 1 or 2 weeks supply is going to be right there to fill that gap, and then the pressure is back on, and maybe they'll move on to another ship that's very low, maybe not, and then we'll see that downtrend again. But usually we do see most of these Tech 3 ships with very heavy pressure from the oversupply and lower prices, and here and there people do try to buy at the bottom, increasing the price all of a sudden, but it tends to be decently short-lived. Although I must say lately they've been moving steadily for like several weeks, up to maybe 1.5 months here, almost 2 months, but that pressure keeps coming back. You can also see that on the 5-day moving average that there are slight spikes, but then a dip back down, slide upwards, down again. So it's very difficult for Tech 3 ships at the moment to have an increase in price that's stable in any way, just because there is so much production ready to fill the gap or take the opportunity. And then for the extra product this week, 25 450. I'm going to take a look at the fuels. I'm actually a little bit curious to see what the fuel market's actually been doing over 6 months. So we can see, maybe even take a 1 year chart here. You can actually see that we've been very, very low in the last four to 5 months maybe. And we're now slowly creeping up, which is a little bit surprising to me because CCP did change the ice bells to be limited in size, and despite that we were at very low prices for fuels for quite a while, and here for the MR fuel blocks at least we are slowly going up again, but all of this is very, very affordable, and so with the new structures they're planning to have even less fuel consumption. You know, they're planning to have fuel consumption depend on actual usage of facilities. This is actually going to put, I think, even more pressure on fuel prices later, so I'm a bit surprised to see us at low prices at the moment. Next up here we've got the Caldari one. I'll take the 1 year chart here again. As you can see, Caldari did have an increase in price for a little bit, but back down to 15,000 ISK, and now moving back up. So all of this is still very affordable, decently cheap prices for fuel blocks, decently stable as well. And we even see that the Caldari fuel blocks have been going down in the last month or so, and now they're spiking. If you want to call that a spike, it's definitely pretty limited, but they have been going back up just at the tail end here. But we're still talking 15,000 for Caldari fuel blocks, which is very low on this 1 year chart. Here's the Galente one then. That one is actually touching a 1 year low below 15,000, so 14.7 thousand for the sellers, 14.4 thousand for the buyers. Quite a bit of supply right here. So ice mining, it is something that's very popular with bots, and so that may have something to do with this as well, how easy it seems to be for the market to supply all the needed fuel blocks. We're actually at a 1 year low for Galente fuel blocks at the moment. Next up we've got Minmatar fuel blocks, which is also, I mean, here we are just as low, but again touching the 1 year low on the Minmatar fuel blocks at the moment. It did just recover from that, but yeah, this fuel market, I am guessing that that POS activity may have been going down the closer we go to the summer. That is actually something that's a bit normal, so this may be why on the 6 month chart here you can see that after February Minmatar fuel blocks have been going down, Galente fuel blocks have been going down, and Caldari fuel blocks as well, very slowly. It's just the MR fuel blocks that have done the exact opposite, maybe because Goon Swarm has become like the Imperium and has edged a bit more, I think, towards some sort of MR roleplay. That may be one of the reasons, but this tends to be a general trend that we could attribute to the approach of summer, where activity does decrease. But I am surprised that overall we're actually seeing extremely low prices for fuel blocks, and so the ice changes that have happened more than a year ago, I think, have not made fuel like limited in supply or problematic or unaffordable. And I think CCP's plans with the new structures does indicate that they're planning to keep it that way. It's going to be very easy and affordable to actually fuel your structures. So I think that's actually decently good news, but it was not in line with my expectation. If I would have taken a 1 year chart, I would have actually expected us to be a bit higher than like a year ago, but that's not the case. Anyways, there you go guys, that's it for this EVE talk. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all next time.